Hello, and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And we've just come back from the Mockingbird Cinema in the Custard Factory, where we've seen Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which I suggested almost as a lark, because I wanted to see it, and I was glad it had come here. And you were like, you didn't say no, basically. So
Yes.
I'm not a mega Kevin Smith fan, but I like his interview stuff, and I have seen all his films, I think.
Yes.
You don't care nearly as much.
No, I kind of... I remember the excitement of Clerks, right? It felt like a new voice in the cinema, really. And, you know, some of that dialogue is still, I think, amongst the funniest ever written, really. I mean, I remember that vividly. And then it was almost like a case of diminishing returns. So I do remember seeing Chasing Amy, which, again, was a bit controversial, but I liked it. In fact, I might even have put it in a syllabus once or twice. And then I couldn't get on with Dogma at all.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just didn't like it. I thought it was kind of...
I like Dogma.
Yeah, well, I didn't. And then I think I gave up on him, really. Like, I don't remember seeing Mallrats.
Mallrats was the second, was the one straight after Clerks, and then it was Dogma, I think.
Okay, then I must have seen it. But, you know, I think it was after Dogma, which is now, already 20 years ago, that I just stopped seeing his films, really.
1997, I think, Dogma.
So,
well, the thing is, he's not taken seriously as a filmmaker, really, by anybody, including himself.
That's right.
And he kind of puts that sort of front and centre. He sort of says, I'm not a filmmaker. And actually, he talks... I've heard him speak one time about showing Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which was 2001, I think, which is what this is kind of putatively a sequel to, showing that to his infant daughter at the time, or toddler daughter, Harley, who's in this. And he was like, well, I can't show her any of the dialogue, but I'll turn the sound off. And he said, like, she was into it, so he thought, oh my god, I must be a filmmaker of some sort, because she is into the movie with the sound off. You know, but he's like, he doesn't hold himself up as a filmmaker to anybody.
You know, I think any of his movies with the sound off are just, like, not worth watching at all. I mean... he's very witty speaking. It was very interesting to see the audience at the Mockingbird, right? Because, well, first of all, it was packed. It had a really nice ambiance, you know, the whole thing. But it was still, you know, it was like, I don't know, 30, 40-year-old guys, you know, all balding or half bald, you know, all kind of nerdy, geeky.
They all look like me. Fat, white. No, seriously, I remarked to you at the start. This is like...
You had more hair than most of them.
That's right, I had more hair, and I'll keep my hair. God damn it. But I remarked to you that, like, this was I felt like I fit in this audience like no other, just by my look.
And you did say that.
And B, that this audience is like a Magic Mike audience was, you know, full of screaming women.
Yeah.
It had that feeling, right?
Yeah.
And the film is pure fan service. I mean, there are references in it that I didn't get because I'm not as big a fan as all these guys, and nor am I as old. I was too young for Clerks and Mallrats, and I caught up with them later.
Yes.
So first
well, I think I might have been too old for Clerks, if you know what I mean. Yeah, like, you know, I was already in my 30s when that came out.
Yeah, and that was very much a 20-year-old's movie.
So,
Gen X but you know, so I got plenty of the references, but there were those that I knew I wasn't getting because I wasn't as familiar with the films. I have seen Mallrats things, but it's not on my list. You know,
yes.
It's not. And the audience made the experience what it was tonight. It was great.
Well, it wasn't just the audience. I mean, actually, I felt you responded to almost everything.
Oh yeah, no, the film as well. I mean, the film's cracking. But like, had we watched it with a small audience, or even watched it on our own, wouldn't be the same.
No,
it got huge laughs.
Yeah,
and not just laughs from references. But, you know, the film is hugely self-referential and referential of Smith's back catalogue.
Yeah.
But of the film's own jokes, you know, the audience was totally with it and up for it.
Well, it feels so contemporary, really, because it is, in a way, a very funny and quite incisive critique of contemporary pop culture, and particularly of movies, right? Like, you know, they have this whole thing about reboots and remakes and, you know, the Marvel Universe and Comic-Con, and, I mean, that is the setting for the whole film, really.
It's extraordinarily self-referential, more so than Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back was, which was about their characters, this Blunt Man and Chronic, that are the characters that are based on them in the viewer's universe, as it's known. You know, Kevin Smith had a universe before Marvel did, although, as he says himself, Marvel had a comic book universe before he did, you know. their characters in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back went to Hollywood to try and stop their film being made. In this, same thing again, and the film makes endless reference to that. And how this is a reboot and not a remake, and constantly looking to the audience through the camera to tell them off for coming to see it, and
Yeah, but it's quite witty. So it says, well, what is the difference between a reboot and a remake? And they say, well, you have a young, inclusive, kind of cast and so on. And of course, here's a young and inclusive cast, right?
Yeah.
Again, they do all those things.
They go to Hollywood with.
Yeah. So I thought it was very interesting that way. And it was kind of critical. It was saying, well, you keep making these reboots, and soon you won't have anything to reboot, right? So I thought it was both witty and tiresome. I did laugh, and I think
you laugh quite a lot.
I laughed quite a lot, and I think I got most of the references, actually, even though I'm not a Kevin Smith fan. I mean, this is a film with cameos and very witty cameos, actually, by Chris Hemsworth and Matt Damon.
Matt Damon was wonderful.
Yeah, Matt Damon was wonderful. He brought the house down, actually.
It's the best.
He got the biggest laugh in the whole film, I think.
Yeah.
I thought Justin Long was wonderful as the sleazy lawyer, sleazy camp lawyer.
He is a character from another one of the films, but I don't remember which.
Oh.
I remember reading about it. I can't remember which one.
Yeah.
There are plenty of them that I'm not as familiar with, but definitely he's one of the... Maybe it's Zack and Miri Make a Porno. He played the same sort of sleazy gay character in that. And they were officially bringing that film into the Viewersk universe.
But I also found it tiresome.
Yeah?
Yeah. I did. I thought it's completely self-indulgent, really. And you could tell...
That's what you want.
Well, he was having more fun than I was, let's put it that way.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And it's great to see a director having fun, but it's also it was also kind of, I thought, tiresome.
I know what you mean. I think you have to some degree have some interest or sympathy with the Kevin Smith world to be into it.
Yes.
It's for a complete outsider. I mean, I don't know that they would never find it interesting or funny, but it's not doesn't hold a huge amount of reward unless you already know these people. Because it makes you feel, I think, like you're part of the family.
Yeah.
You know all these people are in it. You know his daughter. You know Jason Mewes' daughter, even maybe. You know the relationships that go back with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck to before they were big. And there's and as Kevin Smith said in that Q&A at the end, the thing that he likes most about making movies is the friendship with people, and that comes through completely. Sure,
and he's very witty, and he's very charismatic, actually. I think. But I don't know, the film is still a series of sketches, right? Some jokes land, some jokes don't land. It's all very amiable in a kind of a shaggy way. It's all kind of countercultural, but not really dangerous, but very safe.
Yeah.
So, I'm very glad I saw it, and I'm very glad I saw it with this audience. I'm very glad I saw it with you, because actually I think you're so knowledgeable on, the whole Kevin Smith thing. But it didn't make me feel... I'm not going to go out on a wintry evening, on my own to see the next Kevin Smith film. Let's put it that way. It hasn't won me over.
Yeah. Well, unless it's with me and it's back at the Mockingbird where we know there's an audience for it.
That would be interesting.
Because it's the audience that I think... it sounds like I'm damning the movie in a way by saying it's only the audience. And it's not. I would happily watch this movie on my own or watch it on DVD or whatever. Or DVD, streaming or what have you. But, and I'm sure I will later, I'll have another sort of fun time with it, but it was actually a special experience seeing it with an audience that was so into it and so up for it.
And so responsive. I mean, actually, I did find that.
And I don't think we'll hear bigger laughs in a cinema.
Yes.
I don't think we have all year.
Yeah. I mean, I did feel, that it was a rewarding experience, right? So, it's not my cup of tea, but I found it a rewarding experience.
Yeah.
And I suppose, I'm not a snob. I mean, I think, cinema can be all kinds of things. And, and this kind of evidently gave people kind of great pleasure. But I still feel... Okay, so I have reservations. First of all, he, maybe at 20 when grass was illegal in most places, this could be seen as irreverent or whatever. I did think this was safe and cozy and sentimental, so whatever dimension his films had of being anti-establishment and so on. It feels more like safe and woke. It's woke, yes. It's kind of, it's doing all the right things, right? But it feels like, I don't know, overly cozy. Yeah,
it's a film that satirizes Hollywood in a way that no one in Hollywood is going to be offended by.
Exactly, that's a better way of putting it. Yeah.
And I don't think it's a case of him not wanting to burn bridges, because I think you've sort of seen his career that he's kind of been happy to do that, but he's just not that kind of person anymore, I don't think, and he just wants to make light jokes.
Also, he's not the kind of person to do that.
No.
Actually, I don't agree with that. I mean, he's somebody who's worked with the Weinsteins, from his first film or from his second film.
Yeah.
So he's somebody who knows how to play the system and who's played it well, and you see him playing it throughout the film. And there is something kind of warm and charismatic about it, but it's also kind of instrumental, the Q&A at the end exemplified all of those qualities. He's got his questions, he's given someone a role, he's constantly criticizing and putting him down for doing it, he's kind of very charming, he's aware of the audience, there's not a single British accent that you've given me, and we're speaking to the UK.
Yeah.
He's somebody who's aware of all of the bigger picture.
Yeah, absolutely. He's someone who is extremely aware of his audience, and his history of doing Q&As and podcasts is a huge part of that, I think. He has so many podcasts.
Yeah. So and
the Q&As are enormously popular, and that's kind of what's going on here. Is this raconteur aspect? He does not like to shut up, and he will keep on going.
Yeah. And I don't have any problems with it, I suppose. So, though I think, the reason why I'm constantly reserved in this is because obviously, I really am interested in film as art. Yeah, I think kind of cinema is amazing in what it can do, and to see someone not even trying, the way that I think, he doesn't even try, and he's almost kind of proud of not trying. He's constantly putting himself down as a filmmaker, right? So he's got these characters. He brings this way of speaking. I don't deny his originality in kind of bringing in those characters and that way of talking and that sensibility into American culture. He did do that, and that's a great thing to do in a way, yeah. But I also find him very unsatisfying.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I know what you mean about the impression that you get that he seems proud of not trying. Although I think what he's really just proud of other aspects of his films, and I think in a sense his pride is in that he is able to make them, and I suppose that comes down to, as you're saying, playing the system and knowing the system, and and the fact that his films ultimately do find an audience and make money, even if it's very small amount of money, because otherwise he wouldn't get to keep making them.
That's true, but like when he was talking at the end and he was saying, well, the reason why I make these films is because of friendships.
Yeah.
Right, and kind of, the way that we interact on the set, and I suppose, kind of, the collective aspect of it. I think that's all great. I kind of, I'd like to see that brought out more. Film is a collective medium, and I'm glad people develop friendships and have a good time while doing it. But my view on that is, well, hurrah for you. Fuck off. Kind of, I am here watching your film. What is it doing for me? Right?
Yeah.
So, and I must say that his films don't do much for me. I'm not his target audience, I've never been, the kind of person who gets off on doing weed and being a stoner, and,
It's a relatively new development for him. He became a stoner in his old age.
Well,
it's all over these films now. And you're right. It's like it's not cool anymore smoking weed. I don't get it, but he does it all the time.
He does all that. And what was that? There was an expression in the 90s, a slacker. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So that whole slacker thing. I mean, it's never been me anyway. I feel like I'm an up person. When I've taken drugs, they've always been up ones. Yeah. Kind of ones that give you energy and excitement. Yeah. I've never been one to, I can chill on my own. So, I'm just the wrong sensibility for these movies.
Says the man who smokes and drinks.
Well, I do that, but that's not being a stoner.
No, but are they not drugs?
Well, I'm not
intoxicants that help one chill out.
I'm not anti-drug.
But I just mean the type. Are they not things that help one chill out?
No, I always kind of see it as slightly the opposite in a way.
Relaxing with a cigarette and a glass of rum at the end of a day?
It reminds me I should get a cigarette because I don't have one on me.
You see?
I don't know, but I do see that slightly differently. I mean, for me, kind of, a glass of alcohol and the cigarette evokes Bogart or something. It doesn't evoke kind of, being bored and stoned in a mall with nothing to do.
So you're a philosopher.
I've always wanted to be one, but I've never succeeded.
Yeah, there's a style aspect.
No, but
and the style of the stoner is not really something that enormously appeals.
No, I mean, actually, I think I was just too late for that. But neither the style nor the sensibility. It's just something that didn't appeal to me. It never spoke to me.
Yeah.
Kind of. If there's a character I've identified in cinema, it's really like Katie Morosky, right? It's Barbara Streisand playing the communist in The Way We Were with her kinky hair, shouting, "Down with the state" or something. So this kind of stoner is as far from me as you can get.
Not a and all of that really comes down to what I was saying, which was that if this is a film for the fans, and I think. I think you're quite right that Kevin Smith's movies are not the place to look for great cinematic art, but they are a place to look, at least in some respect, for kind of comments on culture. I mean, he does that very sort of actively.
Yes.
And they are a place, I think, in a way, to look for comfort and friendship, and maybe those things which you feel like, that John Waters thing the other week. I don't want to have a film make me happy. I already am happy. I want a film to piss me off and make me depressed. Well, they're not going to do that, Kevin Smith's films, unless you actually.
Yeah, I
hate films.
think if I can summarize in a way what you're saying, which I think the film is very successful at, it's in creating a sense of community. Actually,
yeah.
I felt that the audience tonight and you and me to a certain extent, like, he what he's successful at doing is. He offers this kind of community that allows you to kind of participate in it, really, right? Like, kind of people understood what he was talking about. They got all of the references to all of the obscure pop cultural stuff and the less obscure, and they were in agreement with him. They made, Kevin Smith opened up the possibility of a belongingness to a group of people that seemed like they weren't offered this sense of belongingness very often or very much in culture, and that's a real achievement.
He was making films for the internet nerds before the internet nerds took over the world.
Well, he's got this whole thing about podcasting, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think there's about 7 or 8 references to podcasting in the film. It's obviously something he's keen on.
That's a new thing, and I mean, there's a lot of him in it. Like the smoking weed, the podcasting. Talking about putting his family in films, which he does all the time, that sort of thing. It's and then actually in this he shows up as himself, as Kevin Smith, the director.
That's right,
which was lovely, and it plays himself very nice.
Looking very Hollywood, I must say. With perfect teeth and cheekbones, and having lost like 100 pounds.
Yeah, well, they talk about all that weight that he lost. I mean, they even make reference to the thing about he was being too fat to fly, which was a thing about how he wasn't allowed on a plane, and basically did a whole Q&A just. Telling whichever airline it was that they were dicks.
Right.
They make reference to it here,
Well, now he fits on the plane.
When that's all stuff for the fans who absolutely know that, and like it doesn't really make sense for the characters, but the characters refer to each other as though it's really them because they sort of are them. And that's how it all works, and everyone's just totally fine with it, and all that line blurring stuff. It doesn't matter philosophically. It's happy.
I think what won me over today is how amiable it is, right? Because like I said, I am really not this film's audience. I don't partake of the sensibility and so on, and yet it allows you in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am kind of like the least targeted member of this film's audience.
Yeah, you're the most out of place in that room.
Yeah, exactly. And yet, I still enjoyed it, and I left feeling good. And, it wasn't offensive, and it was inclusive, right? And kind of, the jokes landed on me, some of them, And so I have a good feeling towards it.
And I think you don't want to just do it down as a kind of, it made sense for this audience because there were jokes. He has a way with words, and I think And he has all.
He's very witty.
He also has a way, not just with words, but with timing and delivery of those words. Like, you know that he has a sense of how he wants those lines delivered and what's funny.
Yeah.
And so lines, a lot of Jay's lines will be kind of comments on other things that are happening. Like, I knew one of them had a cat suit.
Yeah.
It's a reference back to the thing. Or about sometimes breaking a promise is the best thing you can do. When I broke a promise to your mum, I made a promise that I wouldn't come in her. It's very, very lovely sentiment, cut in half by the word "come."
Yeah.
And actually, not only does he have a real ear for dialogue, but he has an ear for characters. Because if you compare him to, for instance, Quentin Tarantino as a writer, I think we've said before, Tarantino writes in his own voice for just about everybody.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith doesn't. He hears his characters, and he writes his character's voice.
That's a very good point. I think you're right. Yeah. And there's a generosity about... So, he's very witty. It's dialogue that you don't hear anywhere else. So, actually, there is something unique about that voice that he has. But it's also very warm-hearted and generous. It just is,
Yeah.
He doesn't... Even when he's dealing with the KKK, and he's throwing shit all over the KKK, there's actually something kind of good humored about that. It isn't just a nastiness, It isn't "I hate you." It's more "Aren't you ridiculous?" Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, and he does. I mean, he plonks Glenn Ross in the middle of that scene, which is lovely. Like, and that has that feeling of I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do the Glenn Ross dialogue, and now I get to do it because I'm a fucking filmmaker and I get to do it. There's a sense of that, and it's quite good fun.
Yeah. Put this on pause for a second. So I think we've been talking...
José's back, and having poured himself a little more rum, and is about to light up a cigarette, because he's a man who doesn't take drugs.
That's right. Down. I'm a teetotaler. I'm like an American senator. I'm pure.
When I watched Kevin Smith's films, because there were those that I hadn't seen, Jersey Girl, Mallrats, things. So I did sort of make a project of watching all of them. A couple of years ago, and I in a sense I was surprised how good some of them were compared to their reputations, particularly
How was Jersey Girl?
Have you seen it?
No.
I thought Jersey Girl was really lovely. Right? It's actually I suppose it was in the midst of Bennifer with Ben Affleck.
I remember that
Jennifer Lopez thing, and they made that terrible movie Jiggly, which I haven't seen, but I say that on the basis of everyone's criticism. Maybe it would turn out that I like it because I like Jersey Girl. And the thing is, and this is a spoiler for Jersey Girl. Jennifer Lopez dies like 5-10 minutes in. And actually the whole movie is Ben Affleck raising his daughter. And it's hugely sentimental and all that stuff I like. And very tender. And their relationship is lovely. And Affleck's fantastic.
Oh.
And I come in this going, were people expecting something different because they thought it was the J-Lo Ben Affleck movie? Or actually do they just see things to dislike in this that I didn't? Which is fair enough. But I actually had a really good time with Jersey Girl, and I think it probably gets a bad rap. It's lovely.
How interesting.
There's Mallrats I didn't particularly care for. I think that is very much of its time. I think Clerks probably is as well, but I
love Clerks.
I did always like Clerks.
I unreservedly liked Clerks, and I really liked Chasing Amy, though. It got a bad rap because it's about Ben Affleck falling in love with this, girl who actually is a lesbian, right? But I thought it was very warm-hearted and inclusive. And actually to have that character in those years, to me, was kind of very, quite amazing, right? And then, of course, what happened is then there was this backlash of, this is just a male view of, blah, blah. But my initial impression was that it was inclusive. It was a representation of a lesbian character at a time when there weren't many in American cinema, and that it was kind of one that was sympathetic to the politics of the period, right, and the exclusions of the period. So that I liked it, and
I think. I don't remember it all that well, Chasing Amy. I did only see it the once, and that was one of the films that I hadn't seen.
Uh-huh.
And I did get the sense that between the time it was made and released and 15, 20 years later when I watched it, you know, you would look at it very differently, because I think you're right that at the time it was offering a representation of someone in a certain kind of film that you just wouldn't see.
That was absent.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was largely absent anyway.
And then because sort of representation has moved on so much and has become more visible, for one thing, that you would then look back on that and go, well, I can see all the problems now. But that is unfair to it.
Yes.
You know.
Because you couldn't see all the problems then. Yeah. You know.
Was there a sense in that film? I don't remember it all that well, but was there a sense in it of it having a kind of, well, she just needs a dick and she'll be all right?
There was a bit of that. Or certainly some of the criticisms were that there was a bit of that.
Yeah.
And of course, it's so long ago now that I can't really remember it with any precision. But my feeling was that the film was more generous and better than that.
Yeah. I think the sense I got from it, I remember getting from it, was that actually its view is more of a kind of love is complicated one, which is much truer than any kind of you're either lesbian or you're straight or you know, and nothing. Like the view was kind of one of people actually sometimes just fall in love with who they fall in love with.
I think there was that element, and I think I think there was very much that element around it. But it was at a time when kind of people were more interested in, were more invested in more rigid gender categories or sexual categories than they are now. I mean, I think, you know, we are in a more fluid time. Yeah.
So those were the first three: Clerks, Mallrats, Chase, and Gavy. Well, we haven't really talked about Clerks and Mallrats, but let's move on to Dogma, 1999, not 97.
Yeah.
So you didn't have a good time with Dogma?
I didn't. I thought it was kind of stupid. Yeah, I mean, you know, that whole thing of what's her name as God.
Alanis Morissette.
I thought that was just, you know, stupid, really. And kind of...
Jane Silent Bob with Prophets. What were you expecting?
I found the stupidity also alienating, right? That it was like an in-joke that kind of fell flat.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I was excited because, you see, you were saying, well, you know, this was all before Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were stars, but actually they were already stars by then.
This was after, because the Good Will Hunting was a couple of years before.
Exactly.
But they were mates before that. Certainly with Affleck he was. He was
sure.
He was in Mallrats and stuff. Good Will Hunting was the absolute watershed in their careers.
Yes. I mean, that was the moment where I thought, this is just not for me. I'm not of this sensibility. I didn't like Alanis Morissette. I didn't like them. I didn't like the movie. I didn't like the humor. I didn't like it.
Fair enough.
And I think that's when I stopped seeing his films, actually. Yeah.
I liked it. I mean, I got the sense, not being a Catholic or anything like that, you kind of got the sense that, I suppose in-joke is probably about the right term. Like, this was someone who was conversant with what he was talking about and the kind of characters and symbols he was putting into his film, and being so totally irreverent, not disrespectful, because you always got this sense of like, well, ultimately he likes God and he's a believer in God, but I think you got the sense from the film that it was people around it, you know, like the people who claim to know God on Earth, who are dicks, and everything.
Well, that is definitely true.
And everything that kind of God is actually about is like pure and untouchable, and if only the dicks would shut up. That was kind of a feeling you got from the film. I think even the kind of heavenly characters who showed up in it pretty much said that most of the time.
Yeah, I just can't remember that well. Yeah. I just remember it being a sensibility that I didn't partake in.
Yeah.
And it did all feel like a big in-joke that I wasn't a part of. And that's that, really.
Then there was Jane Silent Bob Strike Back in 2001, which
I didn't see
talked
that.
about a bit. You haven't seen it. I think you would, on the basis of this, I think you'd have a good time with it. Reasonably good time. Jersey Girl, which we've talked about a bit. Clerks 2 was after that, that was kind of the thing that people thought it would never get made, and we never see these characters again. But it was a thing that people got so attached to those characters. You wanted to know how are they getting on 10 years down the line, you know. And that was extremely good fun, and it was one of those that actually I found extremely satisfying. Like, it could have fallen so flat, you know,
right,
because the expectations were so high.
I don't think I saw that, but
it had a donkey show in it. You would remember.
Yeah, okay, then I don't. Yeah,
and Rosario Dawson, who's fantastic.
Yes. But wasn't Rosario Dawson in the first one?
No.
Okay, because I somehow remember her in the first one, but that could just maybe I did see the second one.
There's someone else in the first one.
All right.
The girl who sucked 37 dicks in a row.
I remember that.
Yeah. Then there was Zack and Miri Make a Porno, which was okay, but it was sort of a separate concern.
Yes.
Then there was Cop Out in 2010.
I did not see that.
Which was the one with Bruce Willis, and he makes reference to it in the Q&A at the end of this, that it was the one that people sort of see as the selling out one, because he didn't write it, he just directed it. And I like Cop Out as well. Maybe this is a kind of ongoing thing, because I like Jersey Girl, no one did. I like Cop Out and nobody did. And, I know all the stories about how he wanted to work with Bruce Willis. They're both from Jersey and he's a hero and everything. And they fell apart and Bruce Willis just hated him.
Right.
But I like the movie. Like, it's not amazing. It's a serviceable comedy. It's sort of reasonably well directed. Tracy Morgan in it is wonderful and gives everything so much life.
Right.
And it's like you wouldn't ever tell someone that you should watch this, put this at the top of your list to watch. But it was completely lovely.
Right, okay.
And I had no problem with it. And I think people are curmudgeonly,
okay,
in some respect.
So what came after?
Red State, 2011.
Okay, didn't see that
Which
either.
was his independently produced sort of action/horror thing based on the Westboro Baptist Church, which was the one where you looked at it and you went, holy shit, like maybe he could actually direct a movie. Like there's competence here in sort of visual storytelling. It was okay ultimately. Then 3 years later, 2014 was Tusk, which is the Walrus movie that he keeps referring to.
Yes, I haven't seen that either.
And that's this bizarre body horror, which is definitely worth looking at because it is just nuts. I think I've said to you before, like, the reason I will watch a Mel Gibson film, no matter what it is that they are fucking nuts when he makes movies, because he's just an insane sort of Catholic bigot. And this has that feeling of just like, it's madness, unbridled, put on screen, because they could.
God. I'm looking at his Wikipedia page, and he's got so many fucking podcasts.
And then just after that, there was Yoga Hoses, which I saw and wasn't particularly memorable. That was with his daughter and Johnny Depp's daughter.
Right. My God. He's got SMS Modcast Podcast.
Smodcast.
Network.
Smith and Mosier, that's his producer.
Fat Man Beyond. Hollywood Babylon. My God. That's a DVD An Evening with Kevin Smith.
Yeah. Yeah, so he says in the Q&A today, if podcasting had been around, he said, when they were making Clerks, he would have done a podcast. Like, that's what he is.
So I'm looking at his filmography now, and really, to me, the only thing is Clerks. Because actually, he hasn't made that many movies. So there was Clerks in 1994, Mallrats 1995, Chasing Amy 1997, Dogma 1999, and then they begin to be spaced out. And actually, he often says how he's made a whole career out of one movie. And actually, it's rather true. I mean, that's something he says in this film. So...
Yeah, he said before, like, Clerks is the word he says every single day.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. So, that's not a credit to him.
They're not spaced out after that. It's still every 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, but it's every 2 or 3 years. How long does it take you to make Zack and Miri Make a Porno 2008, Cop Out 2010, Red State 211, but then Tusk 214.
That's how long it takes people to... How long it takes to convince people to make a Walrus movie.
Well, maybe, but, in Clerks is 1994, and since then he's done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 films in 25 years.
A film every 2 years, I don't think, is a terrible record for a film.
You're right. It's not. But none of them are distinguished.
Well, no, that's true to say as well. Even Clerks, probably, which...
No, I love Clerks.
Is zeitgeist and...
It is zeitgeist.
He said, people...
It was an original voice.
People would talk about how it was shot in black and white and what did that mean? And it's like, we never told anyone that it was just because we couldn't afford colour film.
Yeah.
You know?
No. But you get that. I mean, and actually, the way that the film looked is almost irrelevant. I mean, I think it's the way that people spoke that was kind of the thing.
Yeah.
And what they said. And actually, to be fair to him, that is still true today. I mean, I think, you know, kind of people's voices and the way that they speak and, you know, the things that they're making fun of and the things that they're engaging with. I mean, it is kind of a very singular voice in American cinema. You know, it's not particularly great art, but it's still a very distinctive voice.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I like about him as a person, really, is that I kind of believe everything he says. Like, I feel like he is sincere almost to a fault sometimes.
Yes. Yeah,
and I think that's probably what other people like about him too.
Yes.
And one of the reasons that his podcasts and Q&As are so popular, and the reason that you get a Q&A at the end of this, it's a fan thing, you know, like no one asked for it.
And actually,
people
that's
relate to
interesting.
him.
Yeah. You know, somebody who has become a star through directing is kind of an unusual thing. I mean, you could become a brand or, you know, like, in quotation marks, like a type of cinema. But actually to become like almost like a pop star, yeah, which I think he is kind of, it's
he's someone people will go to see.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
So, anyway, it was a really fun experience and I'd recommend it.
Yeah, so I recommend it definitely with an audience. You know, wherever it's playing, because it's not a wide release thing. It's going to be it's a roadshow sort of thing going on. So I think it's already been around the place in America. I'm sure it's still around. We've just seen it tonight in the UK, and it'll be around here and there.
Yeah.
But I have no idea where or when. But
And we've seen it at the
Mockingbird.
Yeah, which I highly encourage people in Birmingham to go to. It's got a really special atmosphere actually, and I really like it.
Yeah, and it was a really good room to keep in the last actually, because it's it's got a very big screen at the front, which you sit quite close to. So and it's actually a good image, but the room itself is kind of compact, so the laughs rebound and reverberate, and it keeps them in and amplifies them. And actually, that was really good.
No.
You know, it wouldn't have been the same had it been like a 1/3 full sort of screen at Cineworld.
Yes.
The laughter would have got lost.
Yes.
So yeah, but if you know wherever it's showing some little independent cinema near you, catch it, because it'll have a decent audience hopefully, and that's I think a requisite. Like, don't miss it with that. It's fantastic. It's good fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Righto. Well, thank you very much for listening. We are Eavesdropping at the Movies, and we are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, and Spotify. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies. The website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com with 197 podcasts now.
Yes, we're edging to our 200 point mark.
200th anniversary. Wow.
Yes. So, thank you very much for listening.
Cheerio. Snoochie boochies.